Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle, and this is the Firewall. I remember the first time I heard the word Palestinian. I was 13 years old. The 1972 Munich Olympics were coming to an end, and I'd been fascinated by American swimmer Mark Spitz and his 7 gold medals, and had a big crush for some reason on Russian gymnast Olga Korbut. You know, you're still a boy at 13, or I was anyway, and when the first reports came in that Israeli athletes had been taken hostage by a Palestinian group called Black September, I remember clearly having what seemed like a very adult idea at the time, namely, that I thought that the entire idea of the Olympics was based on the ancient idea of a truce, that enemies could take 2 weeks off and come together and compete at sports instead of hacking each other to death. It seemed a good idea, a good and honorable thing to do. Who breaks a truce held under a burning flame? Wasn't that the entire purpose of lighting and then extinguishing the flame? That was the duration of the ceasefire? Wasn't the burning fire symbolic of sanctuary from violence, if only for a few days? Well, apparently not. Because on September 5th, 1972, Palestinian terrorists broke into the Israeli compound at the Olympic Village in Munich. Now, I didn't know too much about Israelis either, but to tell the truth, I was learning pretty fast. 2 members of the Israeli team were killed near the dormitories, but we soon discovered that wrestling coach Moshe Weinberg and weightlifter Yosef Romano fought back with teeth, fists, and a fruit knife, slashing, wounding, and knocking unconscious several of their murderers before being shot to death at point-blank range. The Palestinians then took 9 hostages, 9 athletes, visiting under the flames of truce, a land where so many of their relatives had been murdered just a generation before. Then, on TV, Jim McKay said this.
9 were killed at the airport tonight. They're all gone.
No, they'd all been killed. Machine-gunned in their helicopters, bound with the ropes they'd try to chew through, murdered with grenades, and then joining the flames and the other flames past and present as their bodies burned in the helicopters. Now, it wasn't just me. That's how millions of Americans first heard the word Palestinian, through terror. And we remember how, when the dust clouds of the World Trade Center were still in the skies over lower Manhattan, the Palestinians cheered the terrorist murder of 3,000 innocent people. And we saw again just a few weeks ago how 5 Israeli rabbis were hacked to death with axes as they knelt in prayer by 2 Palestinian savages who left the synagogue ankle deep in blood and gore. Never ends. Never ends because the Palestinians are a terrorist nation. It's who they are, and it's what they do. It was a decision they made back then, and they continue to make it every single day. They murder people. You know, in the days after the Munich massacre, indeed, even in the days after the 9/11 massacre, it would have seemed inconceivable to learn that a group espousing not only these tactics, but also the daily intimidation and terrorization of American Jews existed on a single college campus, let alone most of them. But nothing shocks me today. Students for Justice in Palestine can be found at virtually every elite university in America today, and their tactics are the same wherever they go. They not only call for the destruction of the State of Israel, but bully and harass Jewish students until they lose sleep and start to fear for their safety. Now, certainly universities would never tolerate a group like Students for the Ku Klux Klan, making daily arguments in favor of a murderous design against African American students, but Students for Justice in Palestine, SJP, does that every day with Jewish students. Now, from the small, Israeli flags with swastikas emblazoned on them, or images of Jews targeting children and killing innocents, to the large, in other words, equating Israel with Hitler's Germany, SJP is by any definition a hate group. They routinely sponsor an event, for example, called Never Again for Anyone, co-equating Israel's treatment of the Palestinians with the Nazis' treatment of the Jews themselves. And all they're missing to make the comparison valid are, a dozen death camps, some gas chambers, crematoria, and a few million actual dead bodies. Oh, and of course, the elimination of Arabs from the Knesset, stripping them of the only civil rights afforded to Arabs anywhere in the entire Middle East, and all the rest. Now, just to cite one example among thousands, Daniel Greenfield took a look at SJP's Palestine Awareness Week at UCLA in February of 2011. It featured speakers such as Alison Weir, who'd used medieval Jewish blood libels, that's the myth that Jews use the blood of Christians in their religious rituals, as a basis for her attacks on the State of Israel. It featured Hatem Bazian, who had a long track record of anti-Semitism. SJP UCLA was employing his tactics in its war on Jewish students. And then there was Amir Abdel Malik Ali. The Southern Poverty Law Center calls him a charismatic imam who promotes anti-Semitism, violence, and conspiracy theories. Ali has called for war against America and the Jews. Now, speaking to San Francisco State University students in 2009, Malik Ali recalled the campaign against Jews waged by him and the SJP co-founder. Bring them out into the open, he said, because they're like a night flower. There are certain flowers that blossom at night, but when the sun comes out, they go back in. That's the Zionist Jew. That's the Zionist Jew. At the nighttime, they come out, but once the sunshine comes out, once the light is put on them, they scatter. Malik Ali and SJP support the terror group Hamas, whose charter calls for Muslims to kill Jews and to kill every last one of them. So, how effective has the SJP hate campaign been? Well, the UCLA student government recently voted to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel. UCLA has sided with the terrorist nation, enthralled to a religion that treats women like cattle, murders homosexuals by hanging them with construction cranes, and murders not only athletes competing under ancient truths or people kneeling in prayer, but anyone speaking against or trying to leave their religion of peace. And look, all you really need to know about how effective SJP really is to watch the reaction of modern American students when one of them raises and waves the flag of ISIS, beheaders of journalists and exterminators of entire communities of Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike, versus their reaction to the waving of the flag of the State of Israel, which, as I said, is the only outpost of liberalism, feminism, gay rights, legal protections, and rule of law in the entire region. A new genocide of the Jews is afoot, and as with the old genocide, the ground must first be prepared very carefully, and in this case, as with the last case, preparing that ground means dehumanizing the Jews, and now it means dehumanizing the Jewish state. Students in Kafayas may not seem as intimidating as Nazi stormtroopers, but their message is the same, and so is their solution. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to visit us at truthrevolt.org.